This video will describe how Lisa Credit Check works to help you ensure that returns done without receipts are eligible and returned at the right price. In PartsWatch, every line item, whether a sale or return, is tracked to a file called LISA, which stands for Line Item Sales Analysis. This report, accessed from Reports Lisa Transactions, can be used to find sales history of any part to any account. But the data behind this report is also used to validate returns of items at point of sale. When an item is returned, the system will look into the Lisa record to determine whether the part was bought by this customer, whether they've already returned the part, and what they originally paid for the part. Various security options control things such as whether a user is allowed to return a part not found in the Lisa history, whether returns can be done without a receipt, or whether these things are only allowed with a manager override. Let's have a quick look at this report, which has been filtered to only display sales and returns of part number WIX 46975 for account 7. We won't go over all of the fields, but some of the key fields are the transaction date, the line and part number, the quantity sold or returned, and the price. You can see we have several transactions for this part. Note they also have different prices. We won't try and figure out whether any sales are still eligible to be returned from this report. Instead, we'll let Lisa Credit Check do that work for us. Now let's look at some options that impact returns. In Controls Store Invoice Options, Returns tab, we have a New Returns Valid Days field. When a return is done, the system will only go back that many days to find eligible sales to be returned against. The Return Search Order dropdown controls whether to return against the oldest or newest sale first and which order to display the sales at point of sale. Our dropdown is set to descending, meaning most recent sales will be shown and returned against first. There are other controls in this screen to allow similar settings for defects and such, but we'll stick with a basic return. There are also security controls in Controls, System, Override Security. We won't go through all the setups, but my system is set up to allow such returns without any manager overrides. Now I'm going to demonstrate a return without a receipt. I've already selected my customer, and now I'm entering the modifier R for return, and then I'm going to select no receipt because my customer is attempting to return a part without a receipt. But note that if the customer had a receipt, I could enter the invoice number here or scan a barcode off the invoice, and the system would automatically select that invoice to return against as long as the items on it were still eligible to be returned. But I'm going to select no receipt to illustrate how Lisa does the checking for us when we don't have a receipt. First, I need to enter my part number and then my return quantity. If you notice, my current price is $21.38. But these previous transactions, which are shown here automatically, were sold at various prices lower than that. And if you remember, my return search order was set to descending, meaning my most recent transaction is shown first. And my oldest transaction within my set limit of 90 days is shown last. It really depends on your store policy, but since the customer has not brought a receipt in, I might choose to return against this item because it's the lowest price transaction. Before we proceed, note that this list shows the original quantity sold and how many items have been returned so far. The invoice in row 1 had a sell quantity of 1 and none of the items have yet been returned. On row 4 we have an invoice where 13 were sold and 1 has been returned so far, meaning 12 more could be returned. Once I return the item on the first row, it will no longer appear in this list when future returns are done. So let's select our first item. Note that this part was sold for $18.50. What's nice about Lisa Credit Check is by selecting this row, my customer will be refunded that price and not my current price. So when I double click this row, the item gets added onto the invoice as a return, and if that's all I was going to do, I could now just click Done Returns, and then finalize my invoice. Sometimes when doing a return, you won't see a list of items appear. Let me illustrate that. I've entered my return modifier already. I'm going to click No Receipt, and now I'm going to enter a part number, a different part number this time, 15002. And I enter my return quantity. It's searching purchase history. And you can see it immediately just puts that one item on the invoice without giving me a list to choose from. So now I can just click Done Returns, and I'm ready to finalize my invoice. The reason this one did not give me a list is because it found a sale in the Lisa history for this amount of 59 cents. Let's walk through one more scenario. Again, I'm going to use my return modifier and choose No Receipt, enter my part number, and my return quantity. This time, notice it says part not found in purchase history. Proceed with return anyway. What this is telling me is one of two things. Either this customer has never purchased this part from me, at least not within the number of days I've specified to search back, or they purchased this part from me and have already returned it. The way my securities are currently set up, as a user I have the discretion whether to allow this return or not. However, if the store wanted more control over this, they could either disable this option or set a manager override. I'm going to go ahead and allow the return. And now I've got my invoice with 3 line items on it, and all I would need to do is click Done Returns and then print it as an invoice to finalize it. This concludes our video on Lisa Credit Check. Thanks for watching.